Okay. So today we are going to be talking with Lauren Popish about the lost and wonderful art of letter writing. And so during this crazy, crazy time that we are all living in, having this actually fascinating shared experience around the world at the same time, and finding ourselves faced with, how to stay connected, despite being isolated or distanced, but also with this opportunity to reconnect. When before have we had the excuse to reach out to anybody and say, how are you? I wanted to check in. When else has there been this shared experience? Just this kind of clean slate that we all have right now as a result of all the chaos. I think everybody's looking for company. Everybody, is welcoming in another hand, another voice, another hangout or FaceTime. And so, Lauren has, and she'll get into the story, but when we were chatting just the other day, she was telling me how, she still uses notes a lot, and writing letters as a way to connect in kind of an old-fashioned way, but in a way that I think is truly, truly different than, sending a text or just another FaceTime. It's a completely different gesture. It, is a different effort, and it has a very different meaning. And especially coming off of some of our last two interviews with Nick Epley and with Stephanie Kuntz, both on which they talked not only about the benefits of, small interactions, so be it with a stranger writing this note to your neighbor or something, but, Nick Epley talked about the power of gratitude and how they've done scientific research studies that demonstrate the power on both ends of how much I can benefit from writing you, a letter or something, and how much the receiver can benefit from, reading that. And actually, the benefits of writing it come whether or not I even give the letter. So if nothing else, and if people are too afraid to give it, I think it's still worth a shot, writing it and finding out. I also realized that I forgot to start recording my audio, but I think we'll just be able to download this video and pull the audio.
We should be.
Okay.
I'm recording on my side too.
Okay, perfect. Because small announcement, guys, we'll also be launching a casual podcast series on which some of these interviews will be featured. Some other new little ideas we're going to be piloting, audio articles. There'll be a lot more short format audio and more crowdsourced content coming up on that new BBXX behind the scenes podcast. But I can stop talking now. And Lauren, welcome to our first quarantined IG Live. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I am so glad to be doing something other than looking at a screen or figuring out how to make my time productive. I'm just so glad to be doing anything else.
Yes, this is thoroughly productive. And so I'd love to just have you start out by, I guess, introducing, who you are, what you do, and then to kind of segue into the topic, I guess, talk about what your personal experience has been thus far, with the situation we're in right now, in what ways, you are living or feeling connection or disconnection. How has this experience we're living in right now lent itself to, feeling disconnect, but maybe in some other ways, unsurprisingly so, etc., connection itself?
Yeah. Well, I spend my time now working on podcasting, and that's how you and I got in touch. I have a company called The Wave Podcasting, and the entire goal or mission of the company is to help bring more diverse voices into the podcasting landscape and really have the people who are creating podcasts reflect more of the diversity of the actual listenership. So when you go to find a podcast, you want to hear your own experience reflected in podcasts you're listening to. And that really comes from having diversity in who is creating podcasts. So we've created a lot of resources to try and get women out of the mindset that podcasting or podcasts are hard to start, or that there's technical barriers to them, and really get them into the mindset that it's doable, it's easy, it's something you can do from home, or it's something you can do in a really safe space like the studio for women that we've created that you can rent. And one thing that about podcasting, and I promise I'll segue in a moment, but what I like about podcasting as a medium is the use of voice, and how unique voice is to every individual. It is actually not, it's like a fingerprint, right? You can't replicate it. You can mimic it, but you can't replicate someone's own individual voice. And in a similar fashion, handwriting is something that is totally unique to an individual. There's people who, think of those people who work, handwriting experts who try and decipher, like, people who have forged notes or forgery. There's people who are trained just to find those intricacies, those things that are just totally unique and different. Even if you try and copy, there's something just so personal and unique about handwriting as well. And I think we're all in this, like, life that we live where we're inundated with things and information, always looking for something that feels authentic and personal and unique just to someone. So, in both cases, voice and handwriting are unique. And I think when you remove being able to see people in person, you actually start to crave some of these aspects of connection that feel totally personable and totally authentic. And that's really what quarantine or being apart from someone, you begin to lose slowly those different aspects of truly authentic personal connection, that either come from being in person or seeing each other face to face. The way that's affected me, I mean, I have really kind of enjoyed not having the experience of FOMO. I don't know if you experience this, but it's like not having an excuse to be somewhere or do something or attend this event or be in a place, and just really permission to be at home. Like, that's a delightful part of this. I think a not delightful thing is where I go for creativity to really expand my mind, which happens to be outside and in public places. I spend a lot of time in hospitality spaces taking photos. I love the design of restaurants and hotels and places where people congregate. I get a lot of inspiration there, and I like taking photos there. So not having that relief is kind of like it's not even getting to be there. It's just contrast. Like, every day looks the same. You're in the same space. It's contrast that I'm really missing. But I am enjoying the excuse to be like, sorry, I can't see you today, or hang out, or be at this event, because everybody is in that position. So I don't know, maybe I'm just lame. Maybe I shouldn't be enjoying quarantine as much as I am.
No, I think I have a few parallels with that, and oh man, so many thoughts. But going back just a bit to our voice as a fingerprint, and as handwriting, and I think it's really interesting because I think with a lot of other things, we know what our handwriting looks like, or you get used to knowing those parts of yourselves, but in both a literal and a metaphorical way, how well do we know our own voice? Just yesterday, my friend Lillian, who introduced the two of us. I think it was either I was with her and something played, or she played a video or something, and I was like, what is this? And then it took me a few seconds to realize it was me talking, but I didn't, without any context, it wasn't immediate, where when I glance at a piece of paper, I know immediately without thinking if I wrote it or not. So it was just interesting how that's a part of us we don't know as well. And that's something we share outwardly with other people, but how often are we sharing our own voice with ourselves? And so I mean that in a literal way, how does it sound? But also in a metaphorical way, I think until we use our voice and, write or podcast or try these things, reflect, how well do we know our voice in the sense of our perspective and opinions and feelings about things? And I think it's, there's that whole psychological argument about whether labels come first or feelings, in
Absolutely.
what order. And I think with perspective, perhaps it could be the same with voice. In regards to the FOMO thing you mentioned, I am not a fan of social media, which I'm not sure how much people know who don't know me about that. But I am finding this to be an incredible time where I actually am considering, reviving, or like I can have a presence on my personal social media, because what I find is that people really like to project their own perceptions onto how happy you are or what you're doing or how great your life is. And just because I'm good at taking a photo and decide to share it doesn't mean I'm happy, or it means nothing. But everybody's in this same situation. It's a level playing field. There is no, oh my God, your life, maybe it is so great right now because we're forced to focus on basically, either working or, creatively on something we're passionate about, or really just connecting is kind of the only other option outside of work that we have. So when those are the only things,
I'd like to note resting is a valuable option.
These aren't competitive things. They shouldn't be. They're collaborative. They're things that we can help each other with, or give advice, share, what works, what hasn't worked, what we're doing, what we're going through. And I am kind of loving the concept of this level playing field that has gotten rid of FOMO. And I think I find it inspiring in a way that gives us the opportunity to be able to share a part of, I would say, our lives, but more ourselves in a way that we wouldn't otherwise. Because I think it's
private life.
Sharing, I don't know what people share, their breakfast or, whatever.
I shared that today.
Yeah.
I shared my breakfast today.
But it says something more about, who you are in a way, given the circumstances. It just feels, different. And so I'm finding that to be fascinating. And honestly, obviously this whole situation is not overall a positive thing, but I think there are very interesting positive lessons that can come out of it. One of which being, I think it presents us with an incredibly unique opportunity to focus on connection, to create new ways to connect. And, is an opportunity that I, with BBXX, really want to try and help people as much as we can to do that and be there for them and create the content and the resources and the company that I think a lot of people are finding that they need and want right now.
I totally agree. From all extreme, you can't live in a happy place all the time, right? Like happiness coexists with like fear and unhappiness. And so it makes perfect sense that when, those things are present, there is room for people to be grateful. And where there's disconnection, there is like the polar opposite. They need each other to be able to exist. You wouldn't know what connection was until you knew what disconnection was. We're going to go deep, and we're going to go philosophical, and we're going to go
off topic.
And we're going to go off topic. We're going to go there. But I think it's just like you could probably go to a lot of different catastrophic things and find these like beautiful little moments. So it's a treat. Yeah.
And
It's
I
important to
think
be mindful of the reality, but it is, if you can find the nice places, the
and I
joyful
think
places.
it kind of going back to the whole social media thing, this simplicity, the simplicity we're being forced to live in right now, and that focus on relationships or the things that we still have, be it in a confined space or virtually, I think it's a really cool way for happiness can only be measured by how much we're focusing on the simple things that, you know, still give our life purpose, and going
Yeah.
outdoors and having hikes and all of that. Yes, that gives a lot of purpose. But when, you know, now we're not looking at how many people viewed the story of you on your hike or whatever, you're looking at, you know, how many people have you connected with today, or are, you know, getting together. For example, one of my friends is having a virtual birthday party on
I
Sunday.
love that.
It's more becoming more about quality rather than quantity in
Yep.
a way, I want to say. And
Hmm.
so I think it's very cool, and I would challenge us all to, you know, maximize our happiness. I think there's still, I don't think the ceiling is as low as people are panicking that it
Yeah.
is. I think you know, the ceiling is much higher in terms of how happy we can still be when we're scoring higher and focusing more on those point scales that matter most for our overall kind of well-being,
Yeah.
more than validation or other things that I think we get distracted with in the complexity of a non-quarantined life.
There's a lot of complexity there. There's a lot of simplicity in a quarantine life that I frankly find my brain can finally comprehend for the first time. So I'm really enjoying that. Well, I mean, to your, so
Oh,
it's
I'm
a
gonna
great
go
segue when we're
record
talking
the
about.
audio.
I lost
And going
you.
back to,
There you are.
oh, did you? I just went and
Just for a
started
second.
recording
Okay.
on the audio. But I wanted to show people that, since you said, you know, you teach people how to podcast with less tech, how much tech do you really need? I didn't have a tripod, and so I am using a Kleenex box over here,
This is
where
innovation,
I'm
y'all.
putting there's
No
I
excuses.
decided not to use the fancy microphone setup that is behind the Kleenex box, and here I'm putting you back in the Kleenex box here as a
I'm
nice
so
little,
cozy there.
a nice sounds
Yeah,
dirty.
no excuses for not starting a podcast when you have a Kleenex box and a phone. What else do you need? Um, you know, when you're talking about quality of communication, quality of interactions, I think it is the right way to think about why I like notes and
Yeah,
handwritten material
yeah,
so much. This is kind of for people who are joining a little bit later, like we wanted to talk about the power of handwriting and letter writing as a way of communication, and maybe some of its actually superior benefits or attributes to text messaging, digital communication, email. And I think that quality is is a really important word there, because you can see the effort. So I would say that is like one aspect
yeah,
that is really cool about writing a letter to someone. You can see the effort. You see how long it took. You know, someone picked up a pen. You know, someone found a card, found a note, wrote it down. It's like they didn't just emails begin to feel, and in fact there's so much like machine learning and automation around emails. I mean, Google finishes my sentences for me now in Gmail, honestly. So it's
yeah.
like, how long did it take me to write that email? Probably not very long. uh, but my effort was, it can actually be seen in a piece and a material and a note and a card, something like that. And I think it is the combination of like effort plus like authenticity, that thing that we were talking about, like your handwriting is as unique as your fingerprint. It's those things that make a card, even a note that is a very short or brief or a postcard, very, very intimate. So it's a connection between these two people. Something that comes to mind is like, you know, when a waiter writes on your receipt, "Thank you," or "Thanks for coming, nice to see you." How much more impactful? I'm sure, I will look it up after. I am sure there is a direct correlation between writing something on a receipt to a customer and the amount of tips. Like I'm certain there is a correlation between those things. It is intimate and personal and shows a certain amount of effort. Wow, that person took out a pen, they thought of me. It's human. And so we've talked about like a couple ways that you can, or you know, who should you write letters to? When should you use your handwriting as not just like a way to be intimate, but like I'd like to think of it as a differentiating factor in a world that is like really everything is competing for attention. So we've talked about, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on notes. Should I go there?
Yeah, go where,
when to
take
use a
it
note?
wherever you want. Yeah,
when to use a note.
totally.
Okay. I have two really successful examples of times in my life where writing a handwritten note was the thing that made a difference in getting someone's attention. Because it's very, very easy to ignore a faceless, personality-less email. It's very hard to ignore. I pulled out a bunch of stuff here because I do
fashion show.
Yes. So like it's very hard to look at something like this,
but
regardless
you also have
of the
really
word.
neat handwriting.
Oh, I didn't write this. This was a note to me, and it is beautiful. It's really hard to ignore the person who took the time to do that, and everything that the way that someone writes says about them, the speed of it, the messiness, the tightness, the smallness, the bigness, all these things say something unique about you. And so I like to use two times that I've used handwriting, handwritten notes to differentiate me. One is in the like in the workforce when job searching. I think it's still, if you were to go on a website and say like, you know, how to get a job, how to succeed in an interview, folks would still say, write a handwritten note as a thank you letter after an interview. I think that's still kind of a kosher thing. And maybe even in that way, sometimes disingenuous. Like when something is commonplace, it's easy to feel like it's manufactured or not as genuine. Where I've used handwritten notes is prior to an interview, to getting an interview, essentially. So if I've admired the work of someone, I used to work in architecture and interior design. I would go on home tours. I'd see something in a magazine, and I would literally find the person who designs that thing. And it's not hard to get an office address these days. You know, many companies keep their addresses on the website, and just said attention to this designer person and said, hey, I saw your work in this magazine. I'm a student. I found this incredibly inspiring. I used it on my recent project, and you know, I'm going to be graduating in a year. If you ever need interns or someone even to just help, I would love to participate. I would love to come take an office tour if I'm ever in your city. Like whatever your ask is, it's really hard to ignore when someone goes outside of themselves. And what is better than getting mail? Not junk mail. And sometimes I even like junk mail. Like I still like catalogs and stuff sometimes to like flip through. But when you pull out your mail and you're like, what is this? And you don't know who it is. I mean, when was the last time you didn't know where something came from, how it got to you, and it was addressed just to you? And so I've done that, and I definitely got a job in college that way after going on a home tour and writing the head designer and just saying like, wow, I really admire your work. And it from a very genuine place, not from a sales pitchy type of way. But said, here's my email if you ever need an assistant or you need help. And they reached out in a month and were like, hey, that was so sweet. I also got in the habit in my early days, like my college days, when I was applying and it was like coming out of the big economy collapse, the last one, not this one. And I was looking for jobs, and I would do a lot of printing of my resume and sending it in the mail with notes attached to it, as opposed to emailing, because I knew someone was going to intake that. You know, even if sometimes with emails, it's like, you don't know if it went to a spam box, you don't know where it went.
Right.
But it's hard to ignore effort, and really it's a small amount of effort, but it's a meaningful, intimate kind of effort. So that's one way. A second way that I've used notes that we've talked about is in the dating world, pretty successfully. I will say I am, in a loving relationship with someone I met in person and not through note writing, although I did have to go track down his phone number, and I had to be the one to initiate a conversation, which to all the gals out there, I think, if you're interested in someone, don't wait for that. Guys are totally chicken shit. So, I mean, imagine if all of the responsibility of dating was just like put on your shoulders as a man, and just you had to be the one always to initiate. It's not right.
No.
So don't be afraid to get out there. It certainly works for me. But one thing I used to do in New York a lot was, after I was kind of became disenchanted with the dating app situation, which was like, I wanted to know that the person,
which is a whole other interview we're going to do at some point.
We could go on about this forever, but I became really disenchanted with the fact that I couldn't understand someone's body language from an application, right? So I was like, I have to meet people in person to know if the chemistry is going to be there, because so much of your personality is not just what you say, it's the way you act, it's your posture, it's the way you communicate with service people, it's the way you communicate with your friends, and it's really hard to get those out of an app. And so I started kind of like looking around, just going to bars and restaurants, honestly, the subway, like, where I was looking everywhere, and
leaving anonymous notes on the subway.
I know, listen, I've seen it happen, not successfully, but I think I have some tips for that. But, and so I would, if I didn't have the guts to go up to a guy and really just, it can be hard to intro in a natural way. I mean, I've mastered the like bump into someone and be like, sorry.
How often
what are you
did that
drinking
work?
there?
Then it's like all the pressure's on that one look.
I know. He's like, what did you say? What? Oh,
what?
Nothing.
Can't hear you.
Anyway, I'm going to walk away now. No, I started, it was just as easy to, I would keep little note cards in my purse that I kind of personalized. Like, I found the thing that made me like feel confident and cool. It's these little, they look like they're the size of business cards, but they're blank. And they have, I don't know if you can see,
it's like
they have gold foil edge.
Gotta have some class.
There you go. A little bit of class.
These
are from Russell and Hazel, which is like a really cool paper goods company. They have all kinds of beautiful stuff. And I would just, so it's not very big, right? Whatever you're going to say is pretty brief.
Yeah.
But I would just, if I saw someone, I would just say, hey, you caught my eye. If you're ever interested, here's my number. Or if you're ever interested in meeting. And then what I would do is so I've seen people kind of drop this and then walk away, or the situation I saw on the subway was a guy dropped a card like this into a girl's lap, and she was so offended, she smacked it off her lap and like threw it on the floor and was like, oh, I don't want that. Because he just kind of like stood up and like dropped it.
Well,
and she was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about the delivery.
Yeah, so the delivery, can be cheeky, which is my preferred method.
For
I like
everything.
for everything. My go-to line is, "Hey, I think you dropped this," and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "No, really, just
Like,
take
no, I
it."
didn't. I don't litter.
He's like, "No, I don't know anything." Okay, well, if
Is
you
that
want
trash?
it, exactly. He's like, "Oh, you can just throw it. You just have it." It's like, "Oh, all right." Yeah, there's a few things that can go wrong. It's a risk, right? I mean,
But it's
dating
no
has
more of
no
a risk
risk.
than anything else.
I
And the
know.
rejection is
I know.
less than anything else. You know,
It's
if you
so,
sit and talk, there's not even either what they leave the card or they take it, but they don't text you. That's not even rejection. That's
I
just
know.
nothing changing.
Exactly. It, it,
And
I, and it's fun. I mean, you obviously do it when you're with your friends and you get
you don't have
some
to. You
liquid.
could
You
do it while you're by
certainly don't
yourself.
have to. Liquid courage always helps. That was my, at bars and it's like, so the key is, I think you drop this when you're exiting a situation or you're going to the bathroom or you're kind of walking
Yeah.
by.
Yeah.
Um, I have a friend a guy friend who is just moved in with a gal he met because her sister dropped her number in his lap at a
Oh, dropped.
concert in the park.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
So get your
Wingman,
friends,
wingwoman.
yes, get your
Love it.
friends involved, get
I
your
like
sisters
that.
involved, and say, hey,
I'm just going to take around the note cards and start dropping the numbers of my friends into people's laps.
exactly.
My friends won't even be with me. They won't know.
It's perfect. And like, what an endorsement for a third party person to be. I mean, it's the reason we love being set up with our friends as friends, right? Because you're like, hey, I think there's someone you would, vibe
There's
with.
something here from a less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, you're almost acting as a matchmaker. So, so I love the card thing. And I think a key to it is like, a really fun part of it is finding your signature thing. So your signature like piece of paper, your signature like little note. Some people
Or
have
line.
like your line. Some people have like business cards like printed, and that actually does not work very well. And I've seen it happen. And because it is that personal thing, right?
Right.
It's like, this is manufactured, this is false.
Yeah, it's like you already had that. You were going to give it
Exactly.
to
I could
a
be anyone.
networking partner.
Yeah.
You know,
So the
represents. It's not
handwriting is
intimate.
key.
That
It is
feels.
very
It's the
intimate.
human. It's the intimate, and it, is something. I did this. You said you caught my eye, and it's like,
Yeah.
you caught my eye. That's why I wrote this.
Yeah.
Versus, well, I already had these here, and I was going to give them out to somebody. So
Somebody told me I should keep these in my purse for when I see hot guys. Yeah, that's not it doesn't go over.
And I think that, because I'm thinking in the context of, outside at a bar or at night, even, if you're at a restaurant or a coffee shop, or, at a co-work or something like that.
Perfect.
I think this could work. You could say, hey, I think you left this in the fax machine.
Yeah.
Really throw them for a loop.
They're like, what is a fax machine?
Yeah, but I think it could be kind of taken into all other sorts of contexts. And I think it's a really, I'm going to use the word nifty, but creative, human, intimate way of connecting. And I think I would really love to stress how there's no downside. I love that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll never see this person again.
You get the closure. If they don't text you, you have closure. They're not texting you. You have no way to contact them. There is no point of, well, should I reach out to them? If it was a text, should I follow up? You can't.
Yeah. No, ball is in their
court. You did what you could have done.
Yeah.
And now, exactly. I love that.
Yeah. And so also I want to point out that like sometimes like good things can come out of when you drop a note to someone and it's not a fit. Two examples I have of that. One, I dropped a note to a guy in a bar who was very cute and had glasses. And I think my note said, cool glasses. Call me if you ever want to get a drink. And his response was, I'm very flattered,
He
but I don't.
texted you, or were you
He
still?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like,
Yeah.
he was on his way out, and I think I handed that to him. And he texted me and said, "Hey, thank you so much. Like, that's flattering. I don't think my boyfriend would approve." So,
That's
sometimes it's a
amazing.
hit and a miss sometimes.
That's amazing.
But to his point, he was really sweet, and very flattered. And a different example is like, I have a friend who did this, who left a note for a man she saw or had a waiter leave her number with someone that she saw at the restaurant. And he wrote her and said, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I've been happily married for 10 years, but this made me feel
Yeah.
so good and young and like flattered. And,
Yeah.
if I was younger, I would have said yes." So I mean,
Yeah.
he was like, "This made my day."
Yeah.
It's kind of a sweet, genuine thing that there's very few downsides, I guess, is what, even if it doesn't work out,
Right. Because you
you've
can
kind of
still
flattered someone.
do that other person kind of, that favor of that nice little, the joy of receiving a kind note. Who doesn't enjoy receiving some, it's like words of affirmation
Yeah,
in a better form, more unique.
exactly.
And so you just today, actually, right before this call, you were talking about it in the context of the current day situation and how you're bringing note writing locally and happen to have some ultra friendly neighbors who are apparently equally creative and intimate, and using this as a way to connect during this crazy time we're in.
Absolutely. So I see a message coming through that folks are saying.
You know what's great about the Kleenex box? I can't see anything. I guess it's not good.
I see people saying,
"Oh, what are we talking about?"
Please explain what you're talking about.
Okay, we are talking about how handwriting gives us a different personality, is a way for us to connect with our voice, and is a way for us to connect with other people. And how handwritten, we're talking about notes at the moment, but I'd love to even get into later about letter writing, because I actually have personal experience writing letters, some of which were not handwritten, though. Some of them were handwritten, some of them were not. But just the impact and the value that can be felt on the giving end, as well as on the receiving end, and kind of the power that comes from these other forms of communication that are a bit, lost in the digital age, and how we can kind of get back to them and reconnect with them and with each other.
Exactly. And as you were saying, I've had seen this like note writing really take shape since we've been kind of quarantined in our little apartment. We have some wonderful neighbors, and I used to live in New York, and for the 8 years that I lived in New York, I never met my neighbors, not once. I lived in like 3 or 4 different places. Some places it's just like the policy is you don't meet your neighbors, and that's okay. But I've found since I've lived in Los Angeles that the people in this building are very, very friendly. And people are using this as a chance to check in on each other, although folks really aren't wanting to like kind of have
Hang
that
out.
face-to-face. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like our downstairs neighbor, was saying like, one of us has a cough. We think it's a cold. It was last week. He's really over it. But, ultimately, like, we just don't want to take any risks. Like, we don't want to get together. We don't want to see each other face to face. But we've woken up 3 days in a row with different people's like notes and communication on our little doorstep here.
Yeah.
And I wish I had the one with me. One was just with a bottle of wine in a big note that says, "Hope you're enjoying spring break."
Oh my God, get out.
Yeah,
That's genius.
yes, and
In case you weren't,
inside,
here's a bottle of wine. Next week it's
exactly,
going to be tequila.
exactly. Um, and she was like, "We're in this together," is what
Exactly.
I know this is weird, but we're in it together. I can't, really looking forward to when we can,
Yeah.
have a glass together. But in the meantime, hope you can enjoy this on your own. And then, another neighbor checked in. She's using this as a chance to, kind of like be creative. And so she made this like body scrub out of brown sugar, and she was giving this to neighbors. And again, like really trying not to disrupt or come in contact, but just leave something. I mean, like I said, it's such a treat to leave something to be discovered, to get something in the mail, to open your door and see something on your doorstep. And I think it's just such an awesome way to express humanity, even if you haven't met your neighbors, to just say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'd like to use this as a chance to introduce myself. And I hope you're okay. And if you ever needed anything, we've got lots of toilet paper. We've got,
Yeah.
a cup of sugar, whatever. If you need something, please lean on me. And here's my phone number." I mean, to use it as a chance to connect to people, but doing it through the hand, leaving a note, slipping it under the door, leaving it in someone's mailbox. When other time do you have this excuse, maybe Christmas, to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm here for you
Thinking
as
of
a
you here.
stranger."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a total stranger
And
or
but
as a
after that,
acquaintance.
no longer as a stranger. That's how much,
No.
if you were to send a text or something, it's more kind of feels disposable, feels less authentic, or you send a text. And I think that person, kind of the status or the closeness you feel to them wouldn't be changed by a text. But
Yeah.
that note and that gesture, I think creates something different, and it kind of changes that title or that status, and kind of breaks down that stranger barrier, it seems to me.
100%. 100%. And it would be totally different if this person had typed something out. Think of every time that someone has typed something out who's a neighbor. It's usually something like, I don't know if you ever see this, but like, "Can whoever is doing exercises in their room at 4 a.m., can you please stop?" Signed apartment 1A.
Yeah.
So the tone of a typed message or a digital communication, it just loses that personableness.
Yeah. So we don't know if we have time to get into kind of letters and the way that, beyond just the small gesture of leaving something and having, it be about, what it is or the way it looks or feels, but what it actually, says, and diving deeper into the words and the ways, we can express ourselves. And I think differently through a letter versus an email. And not only on the writing end, but again, if I get a text from you, I will probably spend, if I'm in the middle of something, I won't spend time thinking about it. Maybe I don't even read it, or I glance at it, I respond later. But on average, I can only imagine how much time I spend thinking or crafting a response before sending it.
Yeah.
0 to minimal.
Yeah.
If you send me an email, okay, maybe I read it, maybe I respond in an hour later that day, maybe go back to it. But a letter really is putting, it's somebody taking all the time they need to really say things exactly in the way they wanted, to choose the right words, to craft that story, that emotion, whatever message it is. And it gives the person on the receiving end, I think, a really unique opportunity to be able to digest it in a different way. There's not that rush of what's your response. It's more, I think a lot of letters, maybe don't even need a response. And so I guess I'm not putting it into context, but I'm thinking in kind of love letter, the context of a nice note but extended. So I did a series where I wrote love letters to friends and family members, and there was zero purpose of getting any response to any of them. But what it does is it takes off that pressure, because if I write you an email and you don't respond, it's weird. Or, you know, a text like, did you get it, versus I know you got it. Or they'll respond in some other way. But yeah, it gives people the chance to really sit with it and I think feel it and process it and understand it in a totally different way.
I totally agree. I saw another thing come through that said, what are you talking about? So we'll just keep, I think people are coming in and out, so we'll just keep reminding folks. But we're talking about handwriting and letter writing as an alternate form of communication that is more personal and actually has, in some contexts and uses, more power than, say, digital forms of communication. And talking about letter writing, I think you're exactly right in terms of timing, the pacing of it, the intentional thing about it, and the idea and the kind of mutual knowledge that not every letter needs to be responded to, or not in a time frame that is that feels immediate. You know, you can really take your time. That permission to slow down and absorb something, or that permission to not respond at all, I think is really it's interesting. It's the like reason that so many like love stories of olden times happened via, it's like, think of how you could live on a letter for so long and go back and digest, and how
like the density, it's
you could survive off
like
one note in a month or in 6 months.
Translating from like Spanish about the word like how it's nutritious doesn't make sense, but like
I mean, nourishing.
Yeah, it can like feed. Yes, nourishing. Yeah. That was the word. Yes, I was badly trained. They're nourishing. Yeah. They can kind of feed your spirit, the relationship, your soul in a different soul food in a different way.
In a totally different way. And letter writing is something of a whole other depth, and probably could go in on that for a while, especially love letters.
We can do a 2.0 talk.
We can do a 2.0.
And we are thinking, now we're going to do, so with everything going on and people looking for opportunities to connect, we are planning, BBXX is planning a fun series of digital events. And so that'll be anything from, creative writing sessions or journal reflection sessions to, a Wine Wednesday chat where we all drink wine and submit anonymous questions and take turns answering, to, having maybe a dinner party or a dance party, all kinds of, to a Bob Ross drawing class, or might have a friend of mine teach a cooking class and a drawing class. And so any ideas that you guys have for how you want to connect, let us know, and we'll be announcing the schedule for those very shortly. But we will also be including a letter writing session. And I think that we probably have to wrap up soon. I think there's a time limit on these puppies, these IG lives. But as we've been here talking about the power of personalized, kind of more human communication in the form of handwritten notes, in the form of letters, versus, digital communication that is so second nature that we're used to, and how, going back to these almost forgotten ways of communication really differentiates whether it's wanting to get attention for a job interview or a date. It can differentiate us. It can also differentiate, what we're saying, and it has a different meaning. It has a different impact. And so I would love to kind of help people try and channel that and give a challenge to people to, during this time, there is no better time than now to use a more human way to connect, whether it's, I don't know if we can send stuff in the mail, but to a neighbor, to somebody you don't know, to, leaving it, maybe drive by somebody's house and you can still leave stuff, on somebody's front door, or to, your roommate or your partner in the morning, just to start their day off in a different way, and use this time to take advantage of practicing this skill and this gesture and understanding the benefits of it, so that, beyond this, we can hopefully tap into this more often. But perhaps we can give people a little challenge to, today's Friday, this weekend, it's 4:30 p.m. So this weekend, drop a note, write a note.
Doesn't have to be long.
Send us a picture of the note. Let us know how it felt to write it, to leave it, how the other person felt receiving it. And, if do it this weekend, and then we'll be letting you guys know when we're going to do another little live session, during which, heck, you can write a whole series of them. You can take the time to write a long letter. We can talk about ways to craft a letter, what the different, purposes can be, to whom you can write these things, or just come write like funny notes. You could even just look up funny pickup lines, or, anything.
Or write to someone who doesn't exist, or who you've always wanted to know. Write to a celebrity. Write
we
to
have
yourself,
a series
write
of
to
that,
your future children.
Which I'll talk more about on when we do that other call.
That'd be amazing.
BBXX has a series of love letters. So, if you do write a love letter to a partner, which can be definitely one of the things you can come on to a call with the intention of doing. But we also have a series of people writing love letters to, a future lover, partner, soulmate. It doesn't have to have a title, but person, one of their, or if you want to have one or many, a future partner, and saying what they're like, and it can be funny, it can be serious, it can be whatever it is. And again, the way you write a letter, it's like handwriting. The voice that comes out, even though you can't hear it, like we were talking about your actual voice on a podcast, that voice, you can't mimic that voice either. The literal voice, nor the,
voice that comes through
feeling,
your hand.
and the way that you communicate, that voice, that comes through. You can't imitate that either. And so I challenge us all to find our voice through using it in this lovely, almost at times forgotten, but beautiful, impactful, human way.
I fully agree. Very low risk. Very low risk to pick up.
And again, like we said, you don't even have to send it if you don't want to, but send it. Low stakes. So this weekend, let's all write at least one note. Make somebody's day, give them the gift of feeling noticed, of feeling, valued, of feeling more connected, of feeling more human.
Yeah.
Do yourself and them that favor. And then we'll be doing the live session 2.0 and 3.0. Who knows how many depends on how long we're going to be in this situation. But I'm so much looking forward to it. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody who tuned in for joining us. And we can't wait to hear about the notes and the lessons learned and the smiles created through the new communication and connection.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take you out of the tissue box here.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks
All
so
right.
much. See you.
Bye.
Bye.